Nearly every traveler has an African safari on their bucket list as to something they want to do at least one time in their lives. And that was the case with Tanya and me. And there are tons of African safari experiences out there to choose from. There's lots of different countries. There's different kinds of experiences. There's gorilla watching in Uganda. There's Tanzania, there's the migrations on the Serengeti, there's all kinds of different experiences. So the big question is, well, if you're only going to be able to do one in your life, or at least the first one that you plan on doing, what are you going to choose? What's the best option for you? Well, what we did was we went on 3 different safaris in 2 different locations. And we just got back about a week ago from those, and we're going to review those for you today, and you can kind of make a decision as to your own conclusion as to which you thought was the best. We'll make our own conclusions at the end, and then you can decide which way you want to go. In our last video, we were in Egypt, as you might remember, and we flew then from Cairo to Johannesburg and then to Harare, Zimbabwe, for our first safari experience. From Harare, we got on a small little single-engine Cessna 206, just Tanya and I, and flew to Mana Pools National Park in northern Zimbabwe.
Okay, fill her up.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Godfrey.
I'm Tanya.
Nice meeting you. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
They're fine.
All right. Lovely meeting you.
So we boarded this little plane with our trusty pilot Godfrey, who assured us that our 1-hour flight was going to be very uneventful, and we landed on this little dirt airstrip up there at Mana Pools National Park. Mana Pools National Park in northern Zimbabwe. Now that's located right along the Zambezi River separating Zambia from Zimbabwe. It's called Mana Pools National Park. Mana means 4, and it's named after their 4 different large watering holes that provide water for all the different animals that are up in that area. We were met at the airstrip by a guide, who then took us in this 4x4 vehicle to Kanga Camp. And Kanga Camp would be our home for the next 2 nights. The way that program worked was that every day there would be 2 bush drives that would last between 3 and 4 hours each. There'd be one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We would occasionally stop for coffee breaks or tea breaks or snacks or that sort of thing, and everything was really just wonderful. And here's a tour of Kanga Camp. So this is Kanga Camp here in Zimbabwe, and as you come into the camp, it's there's one of these, they call them pools. It's like a lagoon, and the animals come here to drink. And so there's a herd of elephants that come over on the other side. There's lots of baboons. You can hear them all through the night. And there's different wildlife, birds and that sort of thing that are here. And as you come into the camp, this is what you can expect on one of these kind of trips. We have our vehicle over here that where we go out with our driver every day to search for wildlife. And here is the lovely Joyce, who is our director and branch manager.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so Joyce, if people come here,
Yes.
what are the kind of things that they can expect at Kanga Camp?
Oh, it's Kanga Camp. We have the amazing armchair safari.
Uh-huh.
And we have lovely and caring people here.
Yes, I
Yes,
can
you-
say that's exactly
and
right.
delicious food, African cuisines. You can expect anything.
Anything.
Yes.
And they have
Yes.
beautiful crepes for breakfast in the morning, cinnamon crepes. Let's
Yes.
let's
and
go.
the honey.
And the honey.
Yeah. the
Exactly,
honey, yeah.
from the
We have pure honey.
Zimbabwe bees.
Yes, Zimbabwe bees.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're going to go look over here, and I'll show you. This is the swimming pool. We haven't used the swimming pool. Here's the dining area. And a breakfast buffet. We also have our evening meal out here. There are 12 tents here. And we have one of them, of course. One of the things that we noticed about Kanga Camp was how quiet it was. It's fairly remote, and there are no electricity wires anywhere, and we didn't hear any diesel generators, and so we were wondering how they got the power that they have to power the camp. Well, the answer, of course, is it's solar power, and their batteries store up enough solar energy, electricity during the day to power the camp. There are 6 cabins. We had one of them, and we were the only people there. So it made dinner by candlelight an especially memorable and romantic experience. So that's something that was a wonderful thing, and something that you can experience too, and probably you really should. On our daily bush drives, we would go on established roads within the national park, and occasionally do a little bit of off-roading, but there was a lot of pretty rough terrain that we would cover. Fortunately, our Toyota Land Cruiser vehicle just handled all of this terrifically. Okay, so what did we see? Of course, we saw elephants. Lots and lots of elephants.
It's strange smell. I don't know Tanya. I don't know Jay. Who is this?
So do you think that baby is still nursing?
Oh yeah, very much so. Oh, she's just young. This is just like some 6 months old. I guess holding her foot. Left him hand foot. And leg.
yeah.
Guess what? You know this guy, when he's born, when there's a swish washing that grass, they're removing the sand on the road. I assume this is the mother. I can see the teeth and the front legs. Did you see that? She's actually nursing. But she's part and parcel of these sisters in the group.
We saw warthogs. We saw zebras. We saw storks and lots of bird life. We saw baboons. And we found that baboons at night, they go up in the trees because it's much safer for them up there. But baboons, even though they're very social creatures, they squabble an awful lot. They're constantly bickering over whose branch is whose, or whose mate is whose, or whatever the heck they're arguing about. But we can hear their arguments prior to going to bed And then probably about 2 or 3 in the morning, they'd start up again. And then maybe you'd hear some other animals and you'd think, maybe they're being threatened. Maybe some of the baboons are sounding the alarm. I don't know. But anyway, it was pretty fun. After those 2 nights there at Kanga Camp, we took a drive over to a neighboring camp where we spent the next 2 nights, and it's called Zambezi Expeditions, right along the Zambezi River. So we've just arrived in our new home for the next couple of nights. So let me give you an idea here. These are the tents. I think there's probably about 10 of them here. I don't know exactly, but this is the accommodations. And as you can see, it's pretty rustic, but we're out here in the bush, and that's what happens when if you're gonna go see the animals. You got to be out where they are, hanging out and temporarily visiting. This is how we've come in. This is a little bit more rustic than the last camp we were in, but still, it's just perfect. Here's the kind of what you'd call the mess tent.
Look at the view of the Zambezi. Right there, right out our door.
All right. We get home now. Welcome.
Great.
Oh, how lovely.
Oh, look at that. You can see everything from your bed, Tanya.
Oh, you can see everything from the bed.
Is that Boswell?
Yes, it's a boss. It's a
Amazing.
big man. Big man in Manapus.
Wow, what a view.
So same general area, but we saw a different set of animals that were there. Some of the same, but some different ones. This camp was a little more rustic than Kanga Camp, and we were at this camp. It had 6 tents, and there was only one other couple that was there. It was a lovely young French couple who were there on their honeymoon. So the 4 of us had a grand time. The big activities each day, it was the same kind of program of going out on the bush drives, seemed to center at this camp around finding Boswell. Boswell is this very old bull elephant who has extremely long tusks and sometimes is noted for being able to stand on his hind legs as he reaches up to grab vegetation out of upper branches. The staff seemed to be obsessed with Boswell, and that was the big deal. Let's go look for Boswell. Where's Boswell? He roams quite a bit around the park, and they have two-way radios, and they're constantly in contact. Oh, we've sighted Boswell over here. Boswell's over there. Boswell also has a collar on him that's a tracking device. So I think Boswell is almost a protected animal on his own simply because of the tusks that he has, and they're so concerned about poachers. We always seem to find Boswell every day, and as well as lots of other elephants. We also saw hippos. We saw impala, which is sort of the lunch of choice for many of the other animals there in the park.
Their head batting, they're able to get resistance to that head batting because those muscles have well developed. Look at their skin, how shiny and smooth, the muscle, look at that. How shiny and smooth their skin, the muscle, showing that they've reached their prime.
We saw wild dogs, or painted wolves as they're known, which are very stealthy. They cover a wide range and they're endangered. So whenever we could run across some of the wild dogs, that was a real find. The wild dogs they run in packs. They're very well organized, and they're usually followed by 1 or 2 hyenas, because the wild dogs are about 75% effective whenever they find prey at actually killing the prey. And of course, the hyenas, being the opportunists that they are, always want to take part in whatever leftovers they can scavenge from the wild dogs. And of course, that never goes on without a fight, so that's always apparently quite entertaining, although we didn't actually see that. And finally, we saw the elusive and not often seen leopard tortoise. After 2 nights in Zimbabwe camp, we boarded, along with our companions, the French couple, a little bit larger airplane this time to take off to fly back to Harare, Zimbabwe. This time it was a Beechcraft King Air twin-engine plane, which was a little bit more solid than the single engine, and I think Tanya enjoyed it a little bit more. From Harare, we flew to Johannesburg, then got on another plane, an Airlink plane that flew to Skukuza. Skukuza is an airport that is the gateway to Kruger National Park in South Africa. And this, from Skukuza airport, then we embarked on our third safari, this time for 3 days. Our home for the next 3 nights was Naughton's Bush Camp, which is located in the Saba Sands Private Game Preserve, which is adjacent to Kruger National Park. So apparently, with Kruger National Park, there are lots of weekenders and lots of people that drive their own vehicles into Kruger National Park and look for game and have a good time for a weekend or recreation during the week. But Saba Sands is a private game preserve that is directly adjacent to Kruger, and so consequently, there was a great opportunity to see many more animals, because the animals can go back and forth between Kruger and Saba Sands, but they seem to enjoy it a lot more. And sometimes even some of the fields are groomed a little bit, so that the grass is low enough so the wildebeest can eat it, and so forth. So our experience at Naughton's Bush Camp was much different than that in Zambezi. It was more comfortable, that was for sure. But it had electricity on all the time, and we had a beautiful actual cabin that was there. It had air conditioning. It had its own patio. It had not only an outdoor shower, but had an indoor one with a tub, and it was very, very nice. So what did we see at Naughton's Bush Camp in Saba Sands Private Game Reserve? This was really, I would say, not necessarily more fun than in Zimbabwe, but we saw a lot more animals in the 3 days that we were there than we did in Zimbabwe. We saw Cape buffalo. We saw leopards. We saw giraffes. We saw lions. We saw zebras. We saw lots of impala. We saw rhinos. The rhinos that we saw had their horn cut so that poachers would not be interested. Unfortunately, this is what they have to do because black rhinos are really in danger of becoming extinct, and they do everything they can to protect the species. There are a number of these resorts like Naughton's Bush Camp, and there are probably 3 or 4 vehicles that are out roaming around at any one time, and they're all in contact with each other with two-way radios, and so if someone finds a leopard in a certain area or some other kind of animal, then they let somebody else know, and it's not like a tremendous group where everybody gets involved to see these animals, but at least people, they do share information. So it makes it possible to see a lot of different wildlife in a limited amount of time. Like before, we saw wild dogs.
This one is already dead blood in his face. They are very opportunistic. I give them. This is the highlight of this working cycle. I love dogs. It's my favorite. Look at them all. So you can listen, eh? Come back, come back, come back.
We saw hyena. We saw warthogs. And we saw hippopotamus. We saw wildebeest. And of course, we saw elephants. After our 3-day adventure in Saba Sands, it was time to head over to the airport at Skakusa and take our flight back to Cape Town, where we spent the next 3 days. After experiencing that 3 days at Saba Sands and the previous 4 days in Zimbabwe, we can say that these were a couple of different kinds of experiences. They have advantages on both sides. For one thing, however, if you want to see a lot of animals and in relative comfort where you're staying, Saba Sands adjacent to Kruger National Park in South Africa would be the choice. However, if you want a little bit more authentic experience, then the experiences we had in Zimbabwe up at Mana Pools would be a good choice. That was very interesting as well. Although, surprisingly, it was almost twice as expensive. So I guess if it was me and I was going to take my first trip to Africa and that was a choice, of course there's so many places, but between the ones that we saw, I would say probably the one that we took in South Africa, adjacent to Kruger National Park, was the better choice. You be the judge, whatever you think. But whatever you do, it's a wonderful experience. It's not that difficult, not that challenging. If you're an older traveler, your biggest challenge is going to be getting in and out of those trucks, which is not that big a deal. So if you're in a wheelchair, it's going to be an issue. But other than that, go for it and have a great time. Thanks very much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one as we continue our trip through Africa. Bye-bye.